So I got this looked right into it. I got this light here. Try to level up my video making game, but also for a very practical reason that I tend to be busy sometimes in the winter, not as much daylight, so it's hard to record videos when usually I'm just getting daylight here to get like good lighting in the video. So bought this bad boy. Hopefully it helps me, levels up the video making game, but I also want to talk about leveling up the spiritual life. That was smooth. I got 10 things. 10 things that you can do to level up your spiritual life. Say you're an absolute noob, beginner level. How can we advance in the spiritual life? 10 different practices, things to do. Let's get into it. Number 1 is just simple scheduled prayer time. Like if you aren't praying at all, just to take a chunk out of your day, maybe start with like 5, 10, 15 minutes of just intentional time given to the Lord. Maybe you don't even know what to do with that time, but just like personal time that you have given to Jesus, and whatever that comes to be, scheduled prayer time. And then maybe it expands out from there to 10, 15, 20, 30, 45, until you get to maybe a holy hour in your day where you spend that time doing whatever you do in that time, but conversational, meditational, contemplative prayer time with the Lord. Number 2 is reading the Bible, picking up the Bible. It took me a while to actually really get into reading the Bible. I think often because it's like, I pick up the book, what do I do with it? Where do I start? And how do I read this? So what I would normally suggest is if you start with one of the Gospels, pick one of the Gospels, maybe Luke. Luke is what I did a year or two ago, and just read a section of Luke every day. From header to header, call it a pericope. That section, read it and pray with it. 2 simple things. I made a video on this. But 1, what is my heart like here as I read this on a very natural level? How do I feel? How do I respond? Do I feel happy? Do I feel disturbed? Do I feel challenged? Whatever the case may be, number 1. And number 2 is, what is Jesus' heart like here for me? As I read through this section of the gospel, 1, how do I feel? How do I respond? But 2, what does Jesus have here for me? What is his heart like? Reading just a section of the gospel every day and go from there. Number 3 is praying I don't have one on me. Praying the rosary, or really any kind of like devotionals. I might loop into this category of like Divine Mercy Chaplet or praying litanies or things like that. But at least the rosary is such a tool. For me, it was one that was kind of further down along this list. Is something that was hard for me to get into. For some people, praying the rosary is just like simple thing. They grew up with it and it's just so natural. For others, it's not. But it's something that I think totally advances the spiritual life. I've made a ton of videos about the rosary, so you can find those if you want to hear more. But getting into praying the rosary, number 3. Number 4, this one should be pretty implicit, at least on Sundays, but going to Mass and really engaging in the Mass. And how this one can scale is going to Mass more often. Going to Mass an extra day of the week, or an extra 2 days, or 3, or getting up to a point eventually when you're going to daily Mass. My spiritual life incredibly leveled up, exponentially leveled up when I started going to daily Mass and developing a real devotion to the Eucharist, understanding what's going on in the Mass, getting tied in with the liturgical seasons and the calendar and the prayers and the readings, advances the spiritual life on such a level. And the graces received from receiving the Eucharist, Jesus' body, blood, soul, and divinity regularly, daily, on another level. Kind of paired with that, number 5, developing that Eucharistic devotion and going to pray in Eucharistic adoration. We take like apples to apples. I think I've made a video about this too, but praying just normally in like your home or wherever versus praying face to face with Jesus in the Eucharist, in Eucharistic adoration. If you have available to you, it totally depends on where you live, but at your local parish or at a parish in the area, a Catholic church that has Eucharistic adoration available, praying there, spending your prayer time there, takes prayer to another level. Always has for me. Number 6 on the list would be going to confession. And hopefully, kind of like going to Mass, going to confession is something that you do regularly. But if it's not, it should be at least once per year. This is actually a precept of what it means to be a practicing Catholic, is to go to confession at least once per year. When I'm making this video is during the season of Lent, a penitential season, perfect time to go to confession. But to scale that and to level up from there, is to go to confession, you should be going every time that you commit mortal sin, and maybe we'll make a video more. I don't know. This is one of the ones I don't know if I made a video about. Maybe we'll do that. Jokes, I looked it up. I think I have made a video. I've made a lot of videos. Try to come up with ideas. That's why I'm doing this. Regularly receiving the graces of the sacrament of confession is so good. And also, I would combine these two. Going to daily mass and having that just like implemented into your schedule, but also the understanding that you can't receive the Eucharist when you're in a state of mortal sin, you can only receive in a state of grace, causes the need to go to confession. And of course, no one wants to go to confession more often, but impelling yourself and convincing yourself that you need to go to confession regularly, especially when you sin because I so desperately want to receive the Eucharist every day, that takes spiritual life to another level as well. Just surrendering yourself to God's mercy. Number 7 on the list would be spiritual reading. And maybe this is one that is earlier in the list for other people, but it's something that I think is so good. And of course, our faith is not all about just like knowledge of Jesus, but actually knowing Jesus. That's why prayer and the sacraments and scripture are all there much earlier on the list. But reading things about Jesus can draw us into a much higher level in our spiritual life. If I had to give you book recommendations, if I had to give like top 3, 4, 5. Introduction to the Devout Life by St. Francis de Sales. Fulfillment of All Desire by Ralph Martin. Abandonment to Divine Providence by I don't remember who. Maybe Searching for and Maintaining Peace by Jacques Philippe. And I'd maybe throw in Jesus and the Jewish Roots of the Eucharist by Brant Petrie, which is not really a spiritual read, more of like a scriptural theology read. But, and again, our faith is not all about knowledge, but like relationship with Jesus. But sometimes knowledge can elevate our spiritual life as well. My devotion to the Eucharist drastically increased from reading Jesus and the Jewish Roots of the Eucharist. Number 8 on the list is praying the Liturgy of the Hours. It's the prayer of the church. It's the prayer that religious and priests make promises to pray this every day for the rest of their lives. That all over the world, members of the church are praying together this Liturgy of the Hour of praise to the Lord all hours of the day. And there's different hours. There's morning prayer and evening prayer and night prayer and a few prayers in between. And there's office of readings and like prayer in the middle of the night and all that kind of stuff. But most of what it is, if you're not familiar, is just like praying with some of the Psalms, a little bit of scripture, some intercessory prayer, pray Our Father. It's different for each hour, but it's something that, the professionals in the church, the vowed religious and priests, they pray it every day. It's just a way to enter more into the life of the church, the liturgical prayer of the church, and just to have Jesus in specific moments of your day throughout the day. Number 9 on the list, 9 is to incorporate fasting. To take a step from like not just prayer for things or for others, but fasting for things for yourself and for others. We incorporate fasting as something that we're probably familiar with in the season of Lent, but something to do all the time. Like to take it to another level where you are like, you got a test coming up, or you got maybe not like a test coming up. Someone you know is ill, or someone asks to pray for you, or someone is suffering with something they don't know what to do, to not only pray for them, but to fast for them for a specific intention. Like I'm going to like not eat certain things, or I'm not going to use my phone for certain things, or I'm not going to have this certain pleasure, like take cold showers or whatever the case may be, for the intentions of someone else, or for your own, or for, whatever. To go to the length of fasting takes things to another level. Jesus said, not only if you fast, but when you fast. This is part of like real, intentional, and deep spiritual life, is the practice of fasting in addition to prayer. And lastly, number 10 on the list is the use of a spiritual director and finding yourself spiritual mentors to guide you along. If you're doing like all of these things and you're like really deep into it and you're on like level 10 of your spiritual life, whatever the case may be, the devil is going to try to work in your life. So however you can have someone wiser and more experienced than you to confide in and to bounce off, hopefully what a spiritual director does for you is you can tell them about what's going on in your prayer and in your spiritual life, and they can like confirm stuff for you and affirm you and encourage you in your spiritual life and help you to weave through what is just sometimes tricky to dissect in our prayer lives. Finding someone you trust, like a priest or a religious, or just a really holy lay person that you know. Like some of the popes of history had lay people as their spiritual directors. Find someone that you trust to confide in, to talk about your spiritual life. Implied in this and in all of these is also just like community, that Christians cannot live on an island, and having other people, like having a regular Bible study group that you go to, or like just close friends that you talk about the Lord with. But any of these things will help you level up and grow in your spiritual life. And again, our Catholic faith, it is not about just like rules and regulations. It's not about practices or disciplines. It's not about knowledge. It's about relationship. So what we can give in our time and our energy and our effort, and just like conversing with the Lord and letting him into our lives, this is how we grow in our spiritual life and grow a relationship with Jesus Christ and experience his love more and more. Any of these 10 things, hope you find them helpful. If you got any more things that you would add to this list, let me know in the comments below. Peace.